I think 80% of the questions that I had planned for have already been asked. Or
yeah, we don't even need the panel. We can just chat.
Systematically been answered by Alice. So thanks for that.
Yeah.
I'm going to start my walking tour now.
Thank you, Captain.
Anyhow, thanks so much. It's now been 2 years since we saw that innocuous ChatGPT window. We didn't think it'll kind of change our worlds the way it has. And if history is kind of any proof into the future, I think the rate of change is only going to accelerate. So I'll perhaps start with asking all the panelists that how have the last couple of years been, and would request if you could be more objective, like how has it affected, because we hear of all these horror stories, and as much as you can talk, like how has it objectively affected businesses, because like mid and small publishers I know have kind of gotten affected more, but how have the behemoths gotten affected, and how has it informed your strategy going forward? And we'll kind of deep dive into each of these, but at a very broad level, and we could perhaps start with you.
Thanks, Upneet. So at Dow Jones, I run a group called Factiva, and one of the things we're doing is licensing content. Have been doing this for 25 years from publishers directly and working out royalty arrangements with them. And I think having gone out and asked them for generative AI rights, we haven't assumed any rights for the content we have regarding generative AI. Publishers are all in different places. They all understand this in different ways. And in the last year, I've seen different levels of education grow, right? Like 16 months ago, the conversation was like, what is the RAG model? How does generative AI work? Now it's more informed, and they're figuring out how to talk about things like use cases like Alice was referring to, understanding, in our case, we're a B2B product and we're owned by a publisher, so we're in a good position to advise them and monetize their content in that market. So I think everyone's learning, and the amazing thing is that this technology is literally changing weekly. There's new updates coming, so I think that sort of informs everyone that what we see right now is going to look different in 2, 6, 12 months.
Dave, do you want to go about? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we've seen a lot that sort of same growth story with our publishers. So Yahoo News is an aggregator. I see many of our publisher partners in this audience, and some future partners maybe as well that I'll be talking to later. And I think for us, the big thing that we've seen with AI is the first step is taking things that we already do well, that are the reason our customers come to us, and finding ways to do them even better. And I think something that really resonated from some of the earlier discussions has been AI's content understanding capabilities. And that is an area that was already a strength of Yahoo. We are an aggregator. We have thousands of publishers sending us tens of thousands of articles every day. And our core job that we do for our customers is to identify which 10 or 20 of those articles are going to be interesting to you. And then we deliver that via our homepage, recommendation modules, emails. And with the advent of AI, we have just been able to much more granularly define content categories and match them with people's interests in new ways, both with tools we've built internally as well as tools that we've licensed from partners, both big and small.
Alice, do you want to take that?
The one thing we're doing is on the editorial side, thinking about how AI can help with productivity for the editorial team, more on the research and so forth, and then also productivity for our ad sales team. We're not creating new content using AI. Most of my work, of course, is on the licensing side, so have spent the last 18 months really educating myself and understanding, but not rushing into any deals until we feel like we understand the value of our content.
Right. And this is what has kind of gone by. Wanted to discuss about licensing, and you've covered a lot of it in your presentation. So one of the questions, and I think someone asked here as well, was that do you think of licensing as a long-term, meaningful revenue opportunity? Or do you think that, and it's kind of looks like it's played out, not like a lot of these large tech platforms have been used to kind of giving a carrot, and then you kind of get on their wagon, and then they kind of pull the proverbial rug under you. So how do you look at licensing, especially for a billion-dollar revenue company such as yourselves? Like, a lot of these licensing revenues are not moving the needle, at least from whatever deals that we've seen. But there's this larger threat of more referral traffic being taken away from news publishers. So what's the mental model around that?
Well, I believe that licensing is a long-term opportunity because we're creating content all the time. And so that's our value and that's our asset. I think if we stop creating content, then, it's sort of a done deal, right? And then that would be, the end of the industry as we know it. And I'm not going to doom scroll here for us. So I truly believe that. I do think that there will be trade-offs because if we are providing our content to the model developers, it's a very different relationship, right? And it's also a different relationship then in terms of referral traffic because they can give us attribution, they could give us citations, but we also piece affiliate revenue. Is that going to be greater than the licensing revenue we're getting in? So that is the math that each publisher has to do for themselves.
Yeah, because there's, on the permanent content side now, if you see like all the archives have now been scraped. So the fear for the news publishers may be that what if, just like Yahoo and MSN, a lot of the public, and I know Perplexity is kind of giving it a shot, trying to be the front page of the internet, and all this referral traffic not flowing in. So how do you think around that, Dave? Like, do you see any threat on a lot of these first page of the internet kind of platforms from a lot of the LLMs, given that most news publishers are now very open to licensing their real-time RSS feeds? So how do you think about that?
I think for Yahoo, we are very aware of the threats on the first page, the other first pages of the internet that are out there. We've been the first page of the internet 30 years ago. We've been not the first page of the internet over the course of the last 30 years. And, I think we're doing a pretty good job of being the first page again for a lot of people and evolving in new ways. And so from my perspective on when those LLMs, I think one thing that Yahoo has that every publisher in this room has is we have more of the human element. And I think that it's really that combination of using these AI tools to enhance what editors and creatives can do and can think about and can deliver quickly out to customers. Like, that is something that a model is not going to have. And I think a model can try to replicate it, and I think a lot of these models are trying to replicate it. But like we've talked about with this creating new content constantly, that experience of having a real human in the loop is something that will evolve and continue to get better as the models set a new baseline of user expectations for what they can get.
And Matt, I'll just come to you. And Alice and Dave, do you have any empirical or anecdotal data on where you've seen that humans or consumers actually prefer to read a certain voice, like there are certain authors that they follow on your platforms? Or do you see that the affinity to kind of just consume content is irrespective of who kind of generates it? Like, AI generated is as good as an author or a correspondent writing the story. Any evidence or any insights there or any anecdotal data there?
I don't know if I don't, but I think of, social media, right? We have, roughly 125 million users globally, right? We have probably that amount, if not more, just on our social media channels, which are it's a very different audience. It's a mostly younger audience. And so why are they there? We're producing content that's different and unique, and we have a point of view. And so if we now think about how readers are going to be interacting with our content through, say, ChatGPT, I don't know what that voice is, right? And so maybe you go there because you just want a summary, and that's fine. You want something fast. But people still want opinions and a voice, and that's where the human part comes in. Maybe in 50 years, these models will have a human voice. That would be very scary. Think Terminator. But for now, I like to think optimistically that they won't be able to do that.
Dave?
I think for us at Yahoo, we are really, like I said a minute ago, leaning into the human side, and it's the type of relationships that you can build over time with another person on social media, an email newsletter, just have not yet been replicated by these AI bots. And I think as those AI bots continue to try to replicate that, it will be incumbent upon us and upon the publishers and creators we work with to find out what that next level is. And so that might not, a thing such as a newsletter being this primary human connection, that might not be the case in 5 or 10 years. And so we will just need to continue to evolve with the technology.
Right. No, I'm a big believer in voices that people kind of believe in and then they want to follow. Matt, question for you, because your business is like you're more B2B. In fact, you're a business to business. How do you look at what a lot of these LLMs, if you've seen the deep research models, wherein they now kind of spit out consulting level reports and outcomes? And from what I've learned of Factiva, so given you and Factiva and all data as a service, I call this data as a service companies, they primarily rely on fair use of data, but at the same time you are competing with this unfair use of data, if I may call it, because a lot of people don't have licensing deals. How do you see this affecting your kinds of businesses like the LLMs and the Perplexities, who offer very high quality research but are necessarily not playing at the same level field as you are with publishers?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, as I stated already, we are looking at licensing deals and making licensing deals. We have close to 5,000 publishers licensed in Factiva already. I think, one of the things we're encouraging publishers in our discussions with them to do is, like Alice said, really think about the use cases, understand your audience, understand the value of your content, what it means to a potential B2B audience, and also take precautions, right? Secure your content, ensure that it's not being stolen, resort to legal methods if that's something that you feel is you're ready to do, but also lean into the services out there who are trying to do it the right way, right? As a publisher ourselves, publisher of the Wall Street Journal, Barron's, MarketWatch, and others, we're very familiar with we have the same risks and the same concerns that the participants in Factiva have. So I think that's a big part of our strategy, and one that we're sharing openly and being very transparent about, paying for usage. And I think another comment too, something to remember about large language models is they are trained, right? And they are trained in a moment in time. To train them over and to continue updating them is very expensive. So one thing we're doing and thinking about, what Dave and Alice has said as well, the current content, the things that we're all producing every day, there's a lot of value in that content because the models are not trained on what happened this morning, right? So think about the Baltimore Bridge collapsing. If you had asked OpenAI that morning, how is that going to impact my supply chain? It wouldn't even know the bridge collapsed, so it couldn't answer that question. It would answer it, but it would make something up most likely. So think about the value going forward, right? There's training data that informs the model about kind of the state, helps it make language, but then the monetization really is in current awareness and what's being talked about, going forward in time. And I think there's a real opportunity for all of us there.
Fair enough.
Can I just add on one thing? So we're partners with Factiva for many years. And so when Factiva came and approached us about AI rights, it's a different conversation because there's a trust there that's been built through relationships. We know that Factiva obviously is part of Dow Jones, which has the Wall Street Journal as a publisher themselves. So that's a very different conversation. And even though, these LLMs can create these deep research, I've tested some of them on things that I know really well, and I found many errors. And so as a corporate person doing research that you're going to then maybe present to like the CEO or the chairman, you want to make sure that content is super accurate. You don't want to say something bad. I remember doing the research just on AI licensing market, and it told me that the New York Times had a deal with OpenAI, which we clearly know is false, right? So that's where, folks like Factiva and LexisNexis play a really important role in the whole ecosystem because that trust factor is important, and that's something to keep in mind as you're talking to partners.
Thanks. I think, again, this was something already asked, so maybe I'll spare Alice the same question. But we are a small publisher, and a lot of mid and small publishers at this point do not have a template to sit at the table with the large LLMs, but they know that their content, archives, and new is being scraped. So there may not be an answer yet, but Dave and Matt, if you were to think from a first principles method today that, hey, this is my platform, like I have 7 brands doing substantial traffic, but I also want a seat at the table, what are the few avenues that you may explore to kind of not be treated unfairly by the LLMs and get the same treatment? You can go first.
So I just really feel like we have to go back to the four Ps. I'm going to keep that branding to the 4 Ps of that, and I think those apply to publishers large and small. And I guess I would just say for publishers who are looking to negotiate with larger companies, whether that's an OpenAI or that's a Yahoo, it's really about finding places where there's the growth potential is shared. And I think for Yahoo, which I obviously believe in, the growth potential is shared. It's a win-win. Our growth is the publisher growth. And so I think prioritizing potential there. And when it comes to AI licensing deals, I think there is not always that same tie between the publisher growth and the platform growth.
Yeah. I mean, as a single digit or a double digit million revenue company, one of the things that Alice talked about, which cannot be done, is sending a legal notice to an OpenAI because then, so that's where I was coming from, but fair point. Any thoughts from you here, Matt?
Yeah, talk to your colleagues in the industry. What are they doing?
Right.
Forming cooperatives, collectives, talking to other licensors like ourselves. I know there are others out there about different strategies that we've heard. I think that's it. And continue learning, being curious, leaning in, seeing how the industry develops. I don't think there's a clear answer there's not like a silver bullet yet because it is evolving as we're progressing for sure.
I think one other area that's really important is like trade associations. So in the UK, there's a trade association called NLA, and there's others as well, depending if you're more magazine focused versus news. They are at the forefront of what's happening not only from a regulatory perspective, but also what's happening in the marketplace. In the US, there's for news organizations, is the News Media Alliance. And they initiated a lawsuit, I believe it was Cohere, on a number, I need to fact check that, but Cohere on a number, thank you, you're nodding ahead, on a number of publishers. So if you're a smaller publisher, you don't have to be out there on your own. I think going to these trade associations and understanding some of the things that are happening could mean joining in on a lawsuit. I'm not saying start suing because obviously it's a very expensive proposition, but understanding what is happening, what your options are, so you're not left alone. And this gives you time as these collectives and consortiums start getting formed in the market.
I had a question, and in fact, all of you kind of touched upon that. So if you have something to add, please feel free to. Otherwise, I'll jump to the last one. AI has been considered as a foe to all of us, but there is a lot of potential in kind of using. I think Dave, you talked about using it for user targeting, like what story to show my users next. But are there any compelling case studies that any of you want to share wherein AI? Like there are a lot of Silicon Valley stories wherein someone will say, I've kind of done away with my call center. Someone would say, I've done away with my customer support centers. And a lot of these case studies are coming forward, which have either led to acceleration in employee productivity or kind of large cost-cutting measures have been able to be instituted because of usage of AI. So would love to hear any case studies that you may have, which has led to significant acceleration in any of the verticals by using generative AI within the organizations. Like machine learning has been used for the longest time on data insights and kind of ad targeting, but anything on Gen AI and any metrics to share there?
I can share a couple of examples. So one of the things we've done in our Dow Jones Newswires business is implement a new Korean language newswire. And I hesitate to use the word translation. That's what everyone kind of thinks of, but it's AI creation or recreation of the content in Korean. So that's opened a new market for us in a language that we normally, we don't have reporters in that space. We do have humans looking after it, but we don't have a whole newsroom there. So that's an exciting development. And if people are familiar with Joanna Stern at the Wall Street Journal, she's a tech reporter. We've recently launched a Joanna bot, and you can ask tech questions of the Joanna bot, and it's the LLM there has been, it's a Gemini LLM from Google. It's been trained on her tone and articles, and we've done it. It's not like Google's gone and done it behind our back. And we have a method for readers and the audience to engage with her directly and ask questions about different tech developments in the market. So that's very exciting. So
that's super interesting.
I think on the Yahoo side, where we've seen a lot of the kind of like workflow acceleration, is to have the AI pieces be partners to the editorial team and to help sort through the huge amount of content. So we have AI that knows our editorial standards, for instance, and can review content as it comes in and flag potential issues to editors. And that last layer of human review is really important, but what the AI lets us do is review all of our articles and then do really fast human reviews in Slack that then get pushed out into the CMS.
Awesome. So I think we are almost done with the time, but I have one last question, and Alice, maybe you can take it. As a publisher today, with things changing so fast, what mental model would you have a publisher that can inform that I should not just look to survive, but how do I thrive in an AI-first kind of environment? Should I think multi-channel, like definitely have a video and an audio strategy? Should I say, hey, don't just rely on advertising, have more, and subscriptions probably be a content to commerce like the complex as an example. Like what are some of the mental models that I should think or have as my base to kind of survive and thrive in the AI era?
I mean, I would think, think multimodal data sets, right? Not just text content, but videos, podcasts, audios, events. The more you can diversify, and this is something that everyone here knows, the better. I think, for me personally, AI is terrifying, right? But it's also quite exciting because, frankly, licensing was kind of getting a little stale. It was the same conversation over and over again with the same people. And this allows us an opportunity as publishers, especially those in the licensing world, to kind of really flip the script a little bit and to be more proactive about how we approach things. And so there's a little bit of creativity. So I'm quite excited about it while being terrified at the same time. So I say just, experiment, go in with your eyes open, know that you won't be able to create one deal that works for everything. And then continue creating amazing content, because at the end of the day, that's what the models want.
Awesome. Thank you. I hope we're in time, Doug.
All right, thank you all. What questions do you have? Well, you're noodling on it. Matthew, I'm curious, the recreation maybe of your content in Korea, you said there's a level of stewardship that accompanies it. How is that coming to fruit? Is it around like the tone, the local nuances? It's really about ensuring that the recreated content is appropriate in that environment? Or talk to me a little bit about how that's being stewarded.
Yeah, so it is a different unit from mine, but they are looking at it for accuracy. So it is coming from content covering global financial trends, developments, and things like that. So the articles are already written. It's a matter of ensuring that they're accurate for the output itself is actually abiding by our own rules and is still accurate. So I think that's the main way is ensuring accuracy with human input from, kind of getting 60-70% of the way there and then cleaning up the rest. So that's the main way it's being curated and stewarded.
Got it. Other questions from the crowd? All right, well, we're about to head into roundtables where I believe, Matthew, you'll be talking a little bit more about AI, so you can save your questions for there. Thank you all so much. Upneet, Matthew, David, Alice, appreciate your insights on AI.